I recently played KinitoPET, the latest horror game that's been going around the internet like crazy, and a game that gets a bit meta, that starts breaking that fourth wall, can often intrigue me. I've seen the likes of Undertale, Doki Doki Literature Club, I'm Scared, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, and so many more do this concept, and I've always found it so enjoyable just to see how the games attempt to mess with you. Now, KinitoPET is definitely less of an objective-based game per se, it's more of just an interactive experience, which I do feel is worth mentioning. KinitoPET essentially is acting as a Bonzi Buddy type of program, which will appear on your desktop, and as time goes on, you watch as KinitoPET just completely wreaks havoc on your computer. And honestly, I really enjoyed the ways that KinitoPET does this. At first, I definitely felt a little disappointed when I saw the big, goofy icons appear. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did get some nostalgic memories of those Newgrounds Windows simulators where all the jokes were just, oh, you clicked on a program, blue screen. But I did feel like the game was putting up a barrier, like this is where the scares will happen. You do not need to worry, you don't have to get too scared, KinitoPET will stay right here. But it's the moment when these barriers started getting actually broken that the game really started to work for me. Like, the game was showing me a few scares like, oh look, this old Flash game is starting to get really fucked up. And then suddenly the game told me to look at my other monitor, and oh my god, the squid is looking at me from the other monitor. I had barely caught it in time because I was just so surprised by it. In that moment, the game had successfully shattered the safety that I'd felt with the barrier. Now, I wouldn't say the game was that scary, but it left me hooked, wondering what KinitoPET was going to do next. Another part that I loved was actually again to do with the monitors, as KinitoPET later on in the game says that they want to do something, but they want to leave it a surprise, so they're going to turn off my monitors. And let me tell you, I was floored when my monitors actually turned off. I didn't even know games could do this, and yet KinitoPET's doing it like it's nothing. I didn't have to scramble to figure out how to get my monitors back on. Turns out you just move your mouse like you would if you left your computer on too long to hop right back into it, but still, I love the times the game actually caught me off guard. And there was the time where I was filling out the form, and when I filled in the email address, it actually sent an email to my real inbox, which, again, the way that this game tries to blur the lines is so cool. When it works, it really works. Another part that threw me off was when I first discovered this little secret area that you kind of need to get to if you want the final ending. And after quitting out of the game after I was completely confused as to what I was doing, I got there way too early to figure out what I was doing, I then restarted the game and was greeted with this. And let me tell you, that was probably one of the moments that actually spooked me the most, because again, I just did not see it coming. I really wish actually that I had gone into KinitoPET completely blind, but again, that's not KinitoPET's fault. Unfortunately, the internet makes seeing spoilers sometimes just borderline unavoidable. It's why I put a spoiler warning at the beginning of this video, because, quite frankly, I want as many people as possible to just be able to enjoy this game without getting this spoiled for them, because it makes the experience so much better if the game can actually catch you off guard. There were definitely moments where it didn't quite achieve the results it was hoping for. Like, unfortunately, the stuff about, like, oh, you didn't fill in your information correctly was something that I was already aware of, so when KinitoPET started trying to look up my location, it didn't really affect me the same way, but I can't blame the game for that. It's unfortunately one of the problems when something just gets so popular online, it becomes borderline impossible to avoid getting spoiled somewhat. The other bit of fourth wall breakery that really didn't work was when the game tried to access my webcam, because, well, you see, I don't have a webcam. Well, not one connected to my computer anyhow. The only time I ever had one was back during the Zoom days when I needed one for work meetings. And now it firmly sits buried at some dark corner of my room, never to be seen again. So when KinitoPET was getting all, oh, I'm gonna see your face, oh, it ended up pulling up my capture card, which I know, pulling up an Xbox is scary given that I've been a PlayStation fanboy my whole life. But it doesn't quite have the same effect as if it had actually pulled up my real face. The game's also tried to bring up my real name a few times, which, oh no, my real name. Sonic.exe games have done that to me already. I don't need you to try and do this, KinitoPET. Still, those moments where KinitoPET does hit in those fourth wall breaking moments, such as having you pull up command prompt to continue the game, it's honestly so well executed, and even stuff like finding out my location, while it didn't scare me, I could still see how it would absolutely throw someone off who wasn't expecting it. And like I said, there were times the game legitimately threw me off, and I adored it for that. Now the game does have other scares, which I find to be far less enthralling, such as the game doing the hide and seek bit where suddenly I'm in a 3D game, or if it asks me if I'm afraid of the dark and has me sitting in my bed like it's Five Nights at Freddy's waiting for the KinitoPET jump scare, and I just find this to be not great. Like, I've got a million games that I could go to that can give me this kind of experience. KinitoPET is definitely at its strongest when it's actively fucking with you in ways that feel real. Actually, for a good comparison, there's a moment that KinitoPET does essentially twice, and it doesn't work in one instance, but actually works surprisingly well in another. KinitoPET at one point in the game will actually pull up your friends list and kill them all off, but given that it's a custom window I've never seen before, it has no real emotional weight. Like, oh no, I'm solely sure you've killed them all. Oh, that's so scary, KinitoPET. Like, it doesn't have the same effect as pulling up command prompt because I know that's not a real window. I know that's something that KinitoPET has come up with. But then when the game has a similar segment where it pulls up two of your Steam friends earlier in the game and asks you which one you would kill, and then does a fairly convincing screen break effect, that's a lot better in execution. If memory recalls correctly, the game has 3 different endings. One where you choose to stay with KinitoPET forever, one where you choose to try and break away from KinitoPET, which just leads to the same outcome of staying with KinitoPET forever, essentially, and the one where you actually end up deleting KinitoPET, which does require a little bit of thinking to actually figure out. And there's actually some good use as well, as you actually have to go into your app data folder to try and find the encrypted folders and whatnot. It's actually really clever in how everything is done, with you then unencrypting the folders, and then using command prompt one more time to delete KinitoPET once and for all. And with that, KinitoPET ends on one of its great strengths. And I haven't even mentioned some of the other cool things that the game does. Even without breaking the fourth wall, the game does several things which I find to be quite enjoyable, really. For instance, the game has a good memory about things. If the game asks you something or asks you to draw something, it will keep that in mind. I remember the game asking me what my superpower was or what my favourite food was, and asked me to draw pictures of myself and KinitoPET, and then later it created a 3D world that seemed to be attempting to be some sort of paradise, and it just remembered everything, and honestly was a very enjoyable moment just because I was like, oh wow, that's what this was all building to. And then walking to a room and suddenly, oh look, it's the room I decorated at the beginning of the game. Oh look, it's a doghouse of Branson Pickle, the dolphin that I came up with earlier. It's small touches, sure, but it's all these small touches that overall make the game just an endearing experience. Like, I've gone on about the parts that I found were quite underwhelming, but the game overall is such a tight package that I found it overall a very positive experience, and one that I think many people should try once. But, and this is the big but, the game is rather short. I finished the game, got all but one of the achievements because fuck Minesweeper, and I got a total playtime of 2.5 hours. Now, I'm not the type of person that thinks every game needs to be this type of experience that you play for months on end and continue playing until the end of time. Some people are going to be expecting a little bit more out of their experience, and might be a bit shocked when the game ends as early as it does. It definitely surprised me, at least. Now, I still think the game was absolutely worth the price, as a short experience, the game is really well done overall. I didn't even cover everything the game does, because it's actually kind of impressive how much it tries to cram into such a short span of time. The game really doesn't try to pad itself out, and really does try to put everything it's got into making your experience as exciting as possible. So, should you check KinitoPET out? Well, I mean, if you've watched this review, then there's a good chance that most of what I've said has kind of spoiled the magic for you, but still, yeah, I honestly recommend it. If this game even vaguely interests you, this is definitely one to check out. With an experimental game like this, I find when it works, it's truly something special. And honestly, I think it's an experience that so many more people should try out. Absolutely check it out if you're interested, and enjoy everlasting fun with KinitoPET.